I'm Elizabeth at A Literary Princess. If you are new here, welcome. I have a PhD in English literature with a focus on Victorian women novelists, and as you might expect, I love to read. Today I have a video that was requested by a commenter whose name I will put down here, and that is a ranking of all of the Stephen King books that I have read, along with recommendations of which ones I would suggest starting with. So, for those of you who don't know, Stephen King is my favorite modern author. He is literally tied for the title of my favorite author with Jane Austen. And I have read, it turns out, I had to count, but 30 works by him. And there's still plenty more to go because he's got like over 65 novels and God knows how many short stories, and he's still going. So I am going to rank them, and I have them in categories. So categories, how many of the categories are there? There's 6 categories. So there's didn't finish, or DNF'd, it's fine, liked but can't remember well, liked, loved, and then the top 5, which is actually a top 6 because there's a tie for one of the spots. Now within these categories, the only ones that are actually fully ranked are the top 5/top 6, whatever you want to call it. Because it's very hard for me to, like, within those categories of, yes, I liked this one, or I love this one, to decide which one did I love more. And it also very much depends on which ones I've read most recently. So I have gone mostly in the order that I have read them, with the exception of, like I said, the top 5, and with the exception of 2 of the DNFs, which... So the DNFs are broken into kind of 2 parts. Didn't finish and not coming back to, and didn't finish but coming back to. And so because of that, I have ranked like the 2 that I'm not coming back to together, even though one of them was actually one of the most recent ones that I picked up. So I hope that all made sense. If it didn't, I'm sorry, and I hope that it starts to make sense as we go. So we've got a lot to get through. Let's jump in. We are starting with the DNFs. And the first one in this category, the one that the only book by Stephen King that I actually really disliked, and that is Dreamcatcher from 2001. Oh boy. Look, even Stephen King doesn't like this, okay? He has literally said that he does not like it. He wrote this shortly after the car accident that nearly killed him, and he was on a lot of painkillers from the sound of it, so even he doesn't like it anymore. I don't remember how far I got into this because I read it, or tried to read it, quite a while ago. But I know that when I stopped reading, it was kind of the first horror scene of the book. And it was just really disgusting. Like, I didn't need to read that, Mr. King. I did not need to. And I was like, I don't feel the need to continue with this. So I didn't, and I've never looked back. I will say though, it does have a fun kind of catchphrase that the group of characters had when they were young: no bounce, no play, and that's like kind of great. And I do think that a lot, but that's the only good thing that I got out of this book. So yeah, not every book can be a hit when you write, 65 books or more. So the other DNF that I will never be returning to is actually in the collection Different Seasons. So I am counting each novella in Different Seasons as a separate entity because they are long enough that I feel they really do stand on their own. And Different Seasons is from 1982, I should say. And the one I will not be returning to is Apt Pupil. Now, whereas I put Dreamcatcher down because I thought it was bad, That is not the case with Apt Pupil. I actually thought this was incredibly well done. In fact, it was too well done. This is a story about a teenage boy finding out that one of the men in his neighborhood is a former Nazi in hiding, and he begins blackmailing him to get him to tell him all of the atrocities that he committed during the Holocaust. The psychology of these characters, like I said, really well done. It was also nauseating. Like, I was having a really hard time with it. But I think I could have gotten through it if not for the fact that there are multiple scenes of violent animal death, and I do really bad with those. So I made it through one and I was like, wow, that was really awful, but hopefully that's the end of it. Then I made it through another one and I was like, okay, that also really sucked, but maybe that's the last of it. And then the point where I decided, no, I am not finishing this, was when they were gearing up for the third violent animal death. And I was like, no, can't do it. I can't do it, Mr. King. You're disturbing me too much. And that's really saying something, because I've gone through a lot of disturbing things with this man. So Apt Pupil is actually one that I would say, like, I recommend with caution. Like, if you know that you're sensitive to animal death, don't pick it up. But it is a really great psychological study. It's very disturbing. Just know that. But I do think it is very good. I will just never be finishing it. Now, the other three that I didn't finish, I will be returning to, and the first of those is Under the Dome from 2009. I started reading this shortly after the TV series came out, and I was in college at the time, and I just did not have time to deal with it. I don't remember how far I got into it. Like, I got a good way into it, not to the halfway point, and I was really liking it. I just did not have time. And I haven't been back to it since. Similarly, I did not finish The Bazaar of Bad Dreams from 2015, which is a short story collection. I was reading this right when I first started my master's program. I actually bought it in the UK because I love this UK edition. It's so pretty. I'm obsessed. And I feel like I read like maybe half of them. Maybe a little bit less. The only one that I know from the title that I read is because it's like about a haunted Kindle and it was crazy. Anyway. But yeah, no, and then I just didn't have time. And you know, it's short stories, so it's kind of different. You can just dip in and out of it. But I do intend to go back and kind of read it all the way through because other than being about a haunted Kindle, I don't really remember much of it. Third and final DNF is The Stand from 1978 and then re-released with new material in 1990. So, I started this. My bookmark is still in here. Look at how far I was. This is a huge novel, but I was almost 400 pages into it. That's a whole book itself. So what happened is this is about a pandemic that hits and kind of sends things into like the apocalypse. At least that's my understanding of what was happening. So I was reading this, I don't remember if it was in 2017 or 2018, but it got really dark and I just needed a break and I put it down. And then in 2019, I started my PhD, so I was really busy and didn't come back to it. And then in 2020, the real life pandemic hit, and I was like, yeah, I'm not going back to that anytime soon. However, it was really, really good. I was really loving it, and it is actually my dad's favorite Stephen King book. My dad and I both love Stephen King. So I will be returning to this, and I'm gonna have to start at the beginning and read those almost 400 pages again, but just in a few more years, I think. I need to give it a few more years. Now moving into the it's fine category, which basically means I gave it 3 stars. And there's only 2 in here. So the first one is Danse Macabre from 1981. This is a work of nonfiction. It's kind of his exploration of the horror genre. I thought this was, it's fine. I think if I reread it, I might enjoy it more. I think I read it in 2018. I don't know if it just wasn't what I was expecting or what, but yeah, I just remember being like, yeah, it was fine. There was some interesting information, but I didn't like love it or anything, or even really like it. Like I said, it was fine. And the other It's Fine is another novella from different seasons. It is the fourth and final one, The Breathing Method. This was just weird. I was like, what? What is happening? What? Like that is my memory of this novella. Just, what? So yeah, it was fine. Like, it's well written, it's well done, but I was like, I don't know what to do with you. I just don't know what to do with you. So that's why it's in the It's Fine category. We now move into the category of liked but don't remember well. So I've been reading Stephen King since I was 12 years old. And these three books I read right at the beginning of my Stephen King journey, and I have not returned to them since. So I don't really remember them that well. However, I do remember liking them all very much. And the first in this category is Stephen King's very first novel, Carrie, from 1974. So this is actually the first full novel I read by King. The first book, like the first work that I read by him, was the novella The Body, which we'll be talking about much later. And then I went to Carrie, largely because I think Carrie is one of the ones of his that is like most known in popular culture. Like, my mom talked about the movie a lot, and it's just one that I like knew through culture and was like, yeah, I'm gonna read it now because I like Stephen King now. And I loved this as a 12-year-old. I don't remember much of it, like the details. Obviously, I know the basic plot. I've seen the movie many times since. And I remember like the big events. But like the little details are gone. And I do need to reread it. I just haven't picked it up. But yeah, I liked it. And I remember feeling that it was a good place to start with King, especially since it's his first novel. So it's like, hey, that's a good place for any to start. And it does have such a big place in popular culture. I just don't remember enough of it to put it in a different category. And very similarly, we have Christine from 1983, Haunted Car. I don't remember if this was the book that I read right after Carrie or if I did Salem's Lot first. But Christine, I have only read the once. Might have read it twice, because a lot of times when I was in middle school, I would read a book and then immediately reread it. So I might have done that with it, but I have not reread it since. And again, I don't remember it that well, but I remember really liking it enough to order the DVD of the movie through Netflix because Netflix used to be mailed to you. But yeah, the details are mostly gone. Although I remember learning a lot of new swear words from this book and being like, I don't know what that means. But yeah, so I really do want to reread this too because I do remember enjoying it a lot. And then the final book in the liked it but don't remember it well category is Firestarter from 1980. Little girl with telekinetic powers who can also like make fire. Her and her dad are on the run from the government. This is clearly a big influence on Stranger Things for the character of Elle, and that's kind of fun. This is probably the one I remember the least out of this category. And I really want to reread it because like, whereas Carrie and even Christine, I have like the major plot beats. I don't have the major plot beats here. Like, I have the basic concept and that's it. And like some kind of vague-ish memories of a scene or two, but like nothing to connect them with to understand what was happening. So this is definitely one that I need to get back to because it's just like almost gone. So we now move into the liked category. So these are ones that I generally gave 4 stars and that I can remember decently well because I have either read them as an adult or at least read them like not as a 12-year-old or since being a 12-year-old. And the first of these is the first Dark Tower book, The Gunslinger, from 1982. It's definitely not a favorite of mine, but I do find the Dark Tower series very intriguing. I've only read 2 books from it, and there's 7, 8, something like that. I've read this twice, and like, again, it's a really interesting introduction to this world, and it did make me want to read the rest of the series. I actually considered doing that as my project for 2026, reading the Dark Tower series. And I might do that for 2027. But yeah, so this is a fantasy series. So it is a little bit of a different tone. It's also like a Western. So a very different tone from a lot of the other books by him that I had read at the point when I was reading this, which I think was in college the first time. So I liked it, and I think might be a good starting point for people who are not as big on the idea of the horror aspects of Stephen King. Like, there are still some really creepy things that happen in here, but it is like firmly in the fantasy genre, and you can see the influence from a lot of famous fantasy writers that came before King. So if you're not as big on the horror, this might be a good place to start. Next up, we have Dr. Sleep from 2013, and I found a bookmark in it. I have no idea where this bookmark came from or why it's camo print with a Bible verse and a rooster on the back. That is truly bizarre. And it's in my Stephen King book. I don't know. Anyway, this is King's follow-up to The Shining. We are following grown-up Danny Torrance. Does he still go by Danny? No, he's Dan. He's Danny. And we are seeing what has become of him, and then some weird stuff starts happening. I don't really remember what. Oh, he moves to a new town. And he meets 12-year-old Abra Stone, who also seems to have a bit of The Shining. So, I liked this. I did not love it. It is not as good as The Shining, but that would be a pretty tall order. It was good, though. Like, I had a good time with it. I liked seeing how Danny grew up and how he falls into some of his father's bad habits, such as alcoholism, and how he's kind of traumatized from everything that happened at the Overlook Hotel, and can you blame the guy? So, definitely not a place to start, but if you read and liked The Shining, it's definitely a good one to pick up. If you want to be like, what happened to Danny? That's a good place to go. We then have The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon from 1999, about a young girl who gets lost in the woods. This is also not your typical Stephen King horror book. This is, like, the horror is this idea of being lost in nature and out in the absolute wilderness with no people. Like, that's the horror of this book, and being a little kid who doesn't really know what to do about it. I think out of all of the ones in the liked category, this leans closest to more like toward the loved category. Like if I were to rank them in an order within the category, this would probably be toward the top. It's a really good one. Don't read it if you're going hiking anytime soon. Because, yeah. But yeah, again, if you're not as big on the supernatural aspects of the horror, like if you don't want to read about a haunted hotel or a haunted car or a haunted whatever else he has going on, and you want something that's a bit more realistic, this is a good place to go for that. And it's very suspenseful. Now we have book 2 of The Dark Tower, The Drawing of the Three. Out of the 2 Dark Tower books that I have read, this is my preferred one. There's a lot of new characters introduced, and I think they're really great. And I really can't wait to carry on with this series. But I just haven't. So, but yeah. So far, this is my favorite of the Dark Tower series, but I've only read 2, so. We now have another one in different seasons, and this is Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption, which has very famously been made into the movie Shawshank Redemption. So yeah, this is a great novella. I am of the opinion that the film actually improves on it. Like this novella is a 4-star read from me. That movie is a 5-star watch from me. Like I think a lot of the stuff that they added in and expanded on was just fantastic. I don't know how heavily involved King was with the making of that movie. But yeah, so good book, but great movie. And again, a good place to go if you're not as big on the horror aspects of King, because this is much more of it's a prison story. It's much more psychological. There is no supernatural. And yeah, so if you're not big on horror but still want to try King, it's a good place to go. We now have Holly from 2023. This is more of a like mystery thriller following Holly, who is a detective. And we've got a serial killer on the loose. We know who the serial killers are immediately. They are an elderly couple of professors. This is good. This is a good book. I had a lot of fun. It is set in the pandemic. So I was kind of like, I don't know if I want to deal with that right now. But there were aspects of it that I really loved, but mostly it was just, I liked it. 4 stars. And the last book in the liked category is actually the most recent book that I have read by King, and that is The Outsider from 2018. I read this on audiobook with my husband and my parents while we drove down to Tennessee, which was a very long drive, if you're wondering. And this is the story of Terry Maitland, who has been accused of murdering, rather brutally, a 11-year-old boy. And all evidence points to him. There's DNA evidence. However, he has a rock-solid alibi. So we are following the detective who is on the case, whose name I'm not remembering right now, along with Terry and his family. It's really good. I did find the big ending a little lackluster, which is why it's like in the liked category and not the loved category. To be fair though, I was kind of dozing off during it, so I might have missed something. But my parents and my husband, who were not dozing off during it, also said, yeah, the final thing is a little lackluster. But overall, this was really good. And it is brutal though. Like, there's some brutal descriptions of some stuff that be aware of. Like a trigger warning for a very detailed description of a suicide. that I think the entire car could have done without, personally, speaking for all of us, as well as the details of the murder of the boy are very gruesome, so be aware of that. But it's really well done. We are now moving into the loved category. So these are 5 stars, but not 5-star enough to make it into the top 5. And the first of these is a book that I have read several times now, and that is On Writing. From, what year are you from? I should look at these things before I start talking. Really, from 2000? Okay. So I first read this when I was in middle school, shortly after discovering Stephen King. This is part autobiography and part writing manual, which is why I wanted to read it, because as a 12-year-old, the thing I wanted most in the world was to become a writer. So why not read what my favorite writer had to say about it? And like I said, this is one I've returned to several times over the years. It's really fantastic. I love seeing into King's childhood and how he became Stephen King. It's just fascinating. And his writing advice is very helpful. So if you're wanting to get into his nonfiction at some point, or if you're a writer and you're like, well, he knows what he's doing, this is a great place to go. Next up, we have Bag of Bones from 1998. This is following a novelist, because of course we are, who is grieving the death of his wife, and then some supernatural stuff he gets caught up in his Maine summer home. I thought this was fantastic. Now there is a mini-series, and I cannot remember if I watched the mini-series first or if I'd read the book and then the mini-series came out and when I was like, oh, parents, we need to watch this because the book was really good. I don't remember, but I loved it. And I think this is one that is less people loved it. I don't know, but I just thought it was really great. I would like to reread it. Now, I don't know when I read this, if it was in high school or college, but I would like to read it now as a full adult, a real adult, and see what I think, because I just remember it being phenomenal. And I remember liking the mini-series too, quite a lot. So, yeah, it's a good one. More bookmarks. Always say a prayer. Why are all of these religious bookmarks in my Stephen King books? So we now have The Long Walk from 1979, which was originally written under his pseudonym Richard Bachman. This is a kind of dystopian world where there is the long walk and a bunch of boys walk. And the idea is you don't stop until there's only one left. And if you do stop, you die. It was just actually adapted into a movie that I do really want to see, but I think I want to reread this first. I loved, obviously I loved it. It's in the loved category. This was just fascinating and really, really dark and pretty disturbing, but in a different way than some of his other ones. Yeah, I don't know. This is one that I highly recommend to people because I just think it's so good. And it's also really interesting to see what he chose to write under his pseudonyms. This is the only one of the Bachman books that I have read, but it's interesting to see how it's different and how it's similar. And yeah, it's just a great story with great characters. We then have The Dark Half from 1989, which is ironically kind of about King killing off his pseudonym of Richard Bachman. We are following a writer who has also been writing under a pseudonym and kills off his pseudonym. But what if the pseudonym is also kind of this separate entity, Jekyll and Hyde style? I loved this so much. I thought this was like phenomenal. I came very close to putting this in the top 5, to be honest. It's one I want to reread. I don't think I would really recommend starting with it, but if you've read a few King books, it's a fun one just because it's so meta in this idea of the main character's a writer, which a lot of his main characters are writers, and like this killing off of the pseudonym when he decided he was going to stop writing under the Richard Bachman name. It's really interesting and just fantastic. And I know that the characters, or some of the characters in this, come back in another book, but I don't remember what book, and I don't remember the names of the characters. So that's not very helpful at all, is it? Next up, we have Cujo from 1981. This is another one that, like, if the top 5 had more slots, like if I were to do a top 10, Cujo would probably get into the top 10. Rabid Dog. I love the way that King gets into the head of the dog. I think he does such a good job with that. This book is stressful and frightening and heartbreaking and everything. If you're a big animal lover, it might be a bit hard. I will say it was not as upsetting as I thought it would be. Like, I cried. But because Cujo just wants to be a good boy. But it is one that I had really put off reading, even though I owned a copy, because of my sensitivity toward animal death. And, like, you kind of know. I mean, he gets rabies. So I put it off for a really long time until a booktuber, AJ, over at AJ Dunn Reads and Writes. I don't know if they are still making videos, though. They put up a review of it that was just, they thought it was fantastic. And I was like, okay, now I need to read it. And I did, and oh, so good. So, yes, be wary depending on your feelings about animal death, but know that it's not as bad as you might think. And I do think it's one totally worth reading. And I wish I had read it sooner. We then have Needful Things from 1991. This is supposedly the last book of Castle Rock, but I'm pretty sure he returns to Castle Rock in some later books, so sir, you're a liar. But that's okay. This is another one that would be in the top 10 if I were to do a top 10. I didn't do a top 10 because I was like, that'll just be too complicated. Like, there were too many. I'd be like, how to place them. I was like, I don't know, I'll do a top 5. This is so good. So this new store in town opens. It's called Needful Things, and it's selling what you most desire. And the prices seem pretty good. You just have to do a little favor for the owner. Yeah. Fantastic. This is one of his ones where you get to see like the whole town, like so many different people's heads, and the real horror is humanity. And that's how he is with a lot of his books, but every time I love it. I'm like, he does such a good job with it. This was recommended by a friend, actually, because like, obviously, like, I generally speaking have heard of the titles of Stephen King's books, but sometimes I don't think to pick them up unless I hear somebody be like, hey, you should read that one. So a friend of mine was like, Needful Things, so good. I was like, okay. And the library had it, so yeah, just really, really good. Although maybe not one to start with just because it is the last book of Castle Rock. So you might want to read some of the previous books of Castle Rock before you go to this one. There are some characters who make reappearances. I would particularly recommend reading The Body in different seasons before reading this one, because there is a major character who turns up. And it's like, you get to see him all grown up, and he didn't grow into a very impressive person. But yeah, so probably not one to start with, but after you've read some of King and you've had some experience with Castle Rock, it's a really fun one to go to. And the final book of the loved category, again, another one that probably would be in the top 10 if I did a top 10. This is Fairy Tale from recently, 2020, 2021. Sir, where is your copyright page? 2022, I was close. He wrote it during the pandemic. This is a portal fantasy following a boy and his dog. And if Stephen King ever wrote a book specifically for me, this person that he has no knowledge of and does not know exists, this was the book. Because I love portal fantasies, and I love dogs, and I love stories about people with their dogs. And to have a portal fantasy, Stephen King style, is like my dream come true. And this was so much fun. This is another great one to go to if you're not as big on the horror aspects. And I would say there are less horror aspects in this than there are in the Dark Tower series. Like, don't get me wrong, it's still dark. There's still some pretty disturbing things in here. But it is much more of a fantasy. Again. And I don't want to say not as dark as the Dark Tower, but dark in a different way, I think. I think there is more light in Fairy Tale than there is in the Dark Tower, just based on the 2 books of the Dark Tower that I've read. But yeah, this is just so good. I will say, I don't think he does the best job of writing a modern teenager. King does a really good job at writing teenagers in like the 50s to 80s. But once you start getting into the 21st century, it gets a little iffy. But I got used to it pretty quickly, and I was like, yeah, whatever, it's fine. And everything else was so great that I was like, I don't care. I love this. And I love the dog, Radar. Oh. All right, time for the top 5, or in actuality, the top 6, because there is a tie at number 4. But before number 4, we have to go to number 5. And that is Misery from, I need to start looking at the years first. Publisher's note, this is a work of fiction. Yeah, no crap. 1987. Ooh, this is a very psychological one. There is no supernatural here. This is sheer horror of humanity and addiction. He wrote it very much about some of his addiction problems. We once again have a novelist, because of course we do. He's in a car accident in the snow, and he is saved by his biggest fan ever. Isn't that so exciting? Except she's not letting him go. And she's not very happy with how he ended his series, Misery. I forget the last name of the character. Misery Chastain, something like that. And she thinks he should write another one. And she didn't like the manuscript of his new book that she found in the crashed car. And yeah, she really thinks he should write another Misery book, and she's not letting him go unless he does. Oh, this is so good. Oh my God. I think this is a great one to start with, just because it is so utterly phenomenal. Also, great film adaptation. Kathy Bates as Annie, the biggest fan. Beautiful. Excellent job. Yeah, I cannot recommend Misery enough. It is so good. Disturbing. Yes. If you're not a supernatural person, though, yeah, this should be your go-to. So now, tying at number 4, we have Salem's Lot from 1975, and Pet Sematary from 1983. So we'll start by talking about Salem's Lot because this is the one that I have read most times out of these two. I read this at 12 years old. It was, I don't remember if I read it after Carrie or after Christine, but it was one of my earlier King novels. And it is the only book to date to have given me nightmares. Like vivid nightmares that I still remember. I am 32. 20 years later, I remember that nightmare. Vampires. It's vampires. It's so good. I have heard people say that King is trying to do too much in it, and yes, he is. There is a lot crammed in here, and we actually see a little bit of a prototype of Needful Things, which is interesting. But, oh, it's so good. And he's drawing a lot off Dracula, which is super fun. Pet Sematary is a story about grief. Family moves to a new neighborhood. It's right by this major road where a lot of semi-trucks go by. A lot of the pets in the neighborhood get killed, and the children of the area have a pet cemetery up in the woods. How quaint, huh? Thing is, if you go a little bit beyond the pet cemetery, there's an area where if you bury your animal, they might come back to life. So yeah. This is another one that like you would think the animal death would be very upsetting. It's actually not at all bad. The cat church is super creepy, but but like the actual death of the pet is not on screen, and like it's not bad. Like I had no problems. Like yes, it's sad because pet dying, but like it is not bad. Apt pupil is way more disturbing. So the reason these two are tied, I have read Salem's Lot so many times now, and every time I feel like I love it more and more. Pet Sematary I've only read once, but it has made such a big impact that I'm like, oh my God, I love that book. It's one of my favorites. So I'm like, oh, I don't know. And that's why they're both at number 4, because I can't pick. But yeah, both of these are so worth reading. Obviously with Pet Sematary, be aware like it very much is a meditation on grief. Which is actually part of why I think I haven't reread it yet. Because when I first read it, it was before I had a major loss in my life. And I don't really know how I'll react to it now. So, but I feel like I do need to reread it to decide whether this or Salem's Lot is higher, or if they just remain tied, which is also fine. Salem's Lot, obviously, like there's death, it's vampires, but it's not like this is really a meditation on grief. But no, they're both so good. Coming in at number 3 is The Shining from 1977. Now, some of this might be recency bias, and I actually think that's that's part of why I like can't rate each book individually and put them all in an order, like 30-1, is because it depends so much on which one I've read the most recently. But, oh my God, The Shining is so good. This, I recommend starting with this. This is one of the ones I think is the best place to go if you're like, I want to start King, or if you're like, I've read 1 or 2 and I want to know which one to go to next. The Shining. I would say The Shining and Salem's Lot are my 2 that I'd be like, yeah, go for it. Go for it. Jack Torrance, alcoholic and writer. Because why not? He brings his family to his new job at the Overlook Hotel as winter caretaker. They are the only people there. It is a ginormous hotel. They are snowed in and creepy stuff is happening. Because the Overlook has some pretty sordid history. And their son, Danny, has the Shining, or a kind of psychic ability. I just reread this earlier this year, which is probably, like, again, there is some recency bias. However, I have read this multiple times now, and it is just so good. So, so good. I cannot explain enough how good this book is, and how if you were going to read one Stephen King book, it should probably be The Shining. So yeah, highly recommend. So yeah, that's number 3. So you're like, whoa, what are the first 2? Number 2 is It from 1986 in Derry, Maine, where bad things happen and nobody seems to really talk about it. We have a dual timeline. We have the 1950s with a group of kids, as the brother of one of them is killed. And then we have the 80s where they're all grown up and they have to return to town because the evil that they thought they dealt with when they were 12 has not been dealt with, and they need to go back and deal with it. This book has so many flaws, okay? Is it too long? Yeah. It's well over 1,000 pages. Are there some scenes that the editors should have absolutely said, Steve, we love ya, but maybe not. Maybe we shouldn't include that. Just thought. Yes. Is the ending a bit WTF? Yes. However, I love this book for the friendships. He writes friendships of kids in this time era so well. The group dynamics, the way they all interact with each other is just so good. And it is the thing that first brought me to King, which we will be talking about in a moment when we get to the number 1 top spot. But I think it is so worth it. Worth all those pages, worth some of the more, sir, are you okay there? Because, what a great story about friendship. Truly, truly beautiful. I don't know if I necessarily recommend starting with it, though. I know some people too, because it's another one that's like very much in pop culture. And of course, we did have the recent 2-part adaptation. I would say The Shining and Salem's Lot are probably better starting points, if only because they are less WTF in some parts. But I do think that it is worth reading because it is so good. So you might be thinking, wow, high praise for number 3 and number 2. What the heck could be number 1? And we are returning for the last time to different seasons with The Body, which you might know better by the name of the film Stand By Me. This is the story of 4 friends who go off into the woods following the railroad tracks to find the body of a dead kid. And what I love about it is the friendships, particularly between Chris and our narrator, Gordy, are beautiful. This also has a lot about grief. Gordy is grieving the loss of his older brother, which I also haven't returned to since my own loss, and I don't know how I'll react to that. But it's a beautiful book. It's beautiful. It was the first Stephen King book I ever read, so it has a very special place in my heart. It was like the book and the movie as well that me and my middle school best friend were obsessed with. So it's very nostalgic for me. And it's a very nostalgic feeling book. It is a grown-up Gordy looking back at his childhood. Very much how it has the grown-up friends looking back at their childhood. So even though I did not grow up in the 50s, because obviously I'm only 32, there is something so nostalgic about this book. And he nails the friendships and the feelings about friendships at that age, at 12 going on 13. It's so good. I'm like, every 12-year-old should read this. There's a lot of swearing, do be aware of that if you're gonna give it to a 12-year-old. But it's just so good. It's so beautiful. It'll make you cry. And I love it. I've read it, I don't know how many times anymore. Like, uncountable. And I just can't recommend it enough. Especially if you've seen the movie but never read it. Like, definitely check it out. There are things that are different, and I actually think in some ways the movie improves on things. I think yeah, there's a few little things that I'm like, I think that the director, is it Rob Reiner? Yeah, I think it's Rob Reiner, made the right choice there. And I think it's really just because King and Reiner have different opinions on who the hero of the story is. But yeah, no. If you've never read this, please read this. It's so good. It's so... Oh. So that is my ranking of the 30 Stephen King books I have read, along with recommendations for where to start. So let me know down in the comments. Have you read anything by Stephen King? Which ones are your favorites? Which ones that I did not talk about because I haven't read them do you think I should go to next? And do you agree with my ranking? Disagree? What are your top 5 Stephen King books? If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to see more of my bookish content. It has been great chatting with you. I will see you soon. Bye.